Well, this course tries to look at the development of the Cold War, but in a very global fashion. This is not just looking at the confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, although clearly that clash between the two superpowers is at the heart of the course. This is very much a global history of the Cold War, and it will therefore be looking at how each of the superpowers was also interacting constantly with the members of its bloc. So Europeans, in the case of Western Europeans, in the case of the Americans, Eastern Europeans and others in the case of the Soviets, but also many of the emerging nations of the developing world, etc. So it's very much a multipolar look at the Cold War, rather than just something looking at American foreign policy and the Soviet response. The course is primarily driven by two kind of teaching moments each week. One will be a lecture that I will give on the various milestones and important points of the syllabus, and then the next teaching moment will be a class in which students in a smaller group will explore with their teacher the issues raised in the lecture, but also what the reading that they've done and a series of further questions. I think it's very clear that the Cold War was one of the defining features of the latter half of the 20th century. It doesn't explain everything about that period of time, but it nevertheless was something that interacted and intersected with a whole series of other processes that were also occurring. So if you want to understand the 1945 to 1990 world, you need to understand what's going on in the Cold War. And so that course will clearly help people understand that. But throughout, the definition of what is the Cold War will be a broad one, and therefore the interconnection with other processes, decolonization, European integration, non-alignment, all of these things will be explored in some depth. Well, the Cold War may have ended in 1990, but it's pretty clear that a large number of its legacies live on. This is history at its most relevant, and anybody who studies this course will, I think, derive important insights into contemporary problems, as well as understanding the relatively recent history of the world. One only has to think of the current situation in the Ukraine, or the ongoing difficulties with North Korea, or indeed with in several other parts of the world, to realize what's happening between the United States and Cuba, etc., to understand that the Cold War is a relatively recent moment in the past, and one whose legacies and after effects are still very much shaping the situations we face, but also the responses of policymakers to those situations.